Controversial that it split that community wide open.
That community is Cleveland, Ohio. And the tactic you're talking about turns out to be a man named Arthur Fechner, a local drug dealer there. Mr. Fechner says that he entered into a kind of arrangement with the police, that he would help them hook a bigger fish, his supplier in Miami. But in the meantime, he would continue to sell drugs, a lot of drugs to the people in a poor black community in Cleveland. We're going to begin at the top of the story with our chief correspondent, Chris Wallace, who spoke with Arthur Fechner. Arthur Fechner speaking for the first time outside court.
Somewhere during the time I was in the hospital, I told them the only way there was to raise the money would I'd have to sell the cocaine that I had.
Arthur Fechner didn't sell anything while he was under our control. And he certainly did not sell anything with our knowledge, consent, or anything else.
And anyone who says that he did
is a damn liar.
That's what they have to say. You understand? They have to get a story and stick with it because they can't admit that they allowed me to sell drugs.
For nearly a decade, Arthur Fechner was one of Cleveland's biggest drug wholesalers, selling an estimated $20 million worth of narcotics before he turned police informant. Because his undercover role helped put away other major drug dealers, he is now in protective isolation at a prison location we agreed to keep secret. Fechner says that while he was a police informant, he sold cocaine out of this house on Woodland Avenue in one of Cleveland's poorest areas. Right across the street over there, a prime market for his drugs, a public housing project. And in a charge that has rocked Cleveland for the last 4 years, Fechner says the police knew he was selling the drugs and helped him do it.
To them, the sale of drugs was not a sale of drugs. It was just a business like if I was running a convenience supermarket.
Fechner says police allowed him to sell drugs because they used the money to finance an undercover sting, which turned into the biggest drug bust in Ohio history.
What you want? Oh, but how much for half a gram? Half a gram is just 25. A good Coke? Yeah.
But blacks who live in Cleveland's drug war zones are still staggered at the idea that whatever the reason, police would condone drug sales in their neighborhoods.
They sold so much of it in our community. It affected almost every family in this community.
Fechner's career as a police informant began at this Cleveland warehouse in April 1985. Police found him beaten, drugged, and near death. They also found evidence of a major cocaine operation. Within days, Fechner was visited at the hospital by members of the police narcotics unit, who called themselves the A-Team, including Joseph Laub and James Linsky. They had questions and made Fechner an offer he couldn't refuse.
We threatened him with everything. We were going to put him in jail, put his wife in jail, or his common law wife and so forth. And he said, okay. It didn't make any difference to him. But when we threatened to take his children away, that's when the man says he'll cooperate. He loves those kids.
According to Fechner, the leader of the A-Team, Sergeant James Bistricki, was very specific about what police wanted. An undercover sting that would trap Fechner's Miami supplier along with 50 kilos of cocaine. And police wanted the sting pulled off fast, in less than 2 months, before a national drug enforcement convention.
Did Bistricki indicate he thought that this would be good PR and maybe you could get this bust in time for the DEA convention?
There was some talk to that effect, yes. I think it was just the fact that it was going to be a big bust and they could probably go down there and brag about it a little bit.
But Fechner had a problem. He says he told Bistricki he owed his supplier, Jose Munoz, $500,000. And before Fechner could order more drugs, he had to pay that off.
I said the only way I could raise the money was to sell the cocaine. And he said, well, you just have to do what you have to do, that's all.
So you laid it out flat. The only way to raise this money was sell the drugs, and he was giving you approval.
Yes.
Fechner says he set up shop at the house on Woodland Avenue, and that the A-Team told other police to stay away so he could sell his cocaine.
How much in drugs were you selling a day?
Like I said, it'll average anywhere from $12,000 up to $30,000 a day, depending on what kind of business we've done that day.
Now, here you are, doing a big business, $500,000 in a couple of months, with the support, the cooperation, even the protection of the Cleveland police. What's going through your mind?
Well, I'm hoping everything works out fine because I'm trying to do everything I can to please them, and everything they ask me to do, I do.
Fechner said the way he was going to get the money was to sell drugs and that you approved it.
Wrong. No. he said that he'd have to collect past debts to pay off that so he can get more drugs sent up.
But the strongest evidence the police must have known about Fechner's drug sales comes from the police themselves. Undercover tapes the A-team made with its informant, including this conversation Fechner had with his partner, Leonard Brooks, about setting up the Woodland Avenue drug operation.
What we got to do is we got to move a lot of this stuff fast. You know, they want this money quick. Right. So the big thing is to get as many people moving as we can and get as much merchandise moved as we can in a hurry.
Incredible as it may seem, police say they didn't listen to this or dozens of other conversations they recorded. But in one tape, Detective Linsky himself is heard asking whether Fechner's partner has any more drugs to sell.
Did Leonard get a hold of you?
No, not yet.
Okay. Are you supposed to have 75,000 cash right now?
Yeah.
And did he say how much merchandise he had?
No.
When you were asked about merchandise, what did that mean to you?
It meant cocaine.
You're asking whether Brooks still has enough merchandise. Clearly, you thought there were going to be more drug sales.
In the realm of possibility, there may have been more drug sales. I mean, it may eat at you, but you have to stand back and let somebody continue their operation until you have the whole picture.
In July of 1985, members of the A-team stuffed $452,000 in cash they got from Fechner into a hidden compartment of this pickup truck Fechner used to carry drugs and money. And the next day, Jose Munoz, the supplier, came to pick it up.
Well, he took it back and put back into the mainstream of the drug operations in Miami again.
And was that money ever recovered?
No, none of it.
They've broken all procedures that have been established in the narcotics unit for years.
Tom Nealon is a former member of the A-team who left the unit before Fechner started selling drugs here on Woodland Avenue. He says his colleagues violated a cardinal rule of law enforcement. You never let the drugs or money get away.
What's the most money you've ever heard of allowing to walk?
Oh, sometimes you'll let, in the city of Cleveland, it's different in different cities, but in Cleveland, maybe $2,000 they might let walk.
What about $500,000?
Never. It has never been done.
But when the sting was announced in September of '85, no one was talking about the $500,000. The police showed off the 46 kilos that had been seized and the people who had been charged, including Jose Munoz. And within months, Howard Rudolph, head of narcotics, was named chief of police by Mayor George Voinovich, who called the undercover operation innovative. But the triumph was short-lived. Federal agents arrested Fechner on another drug charge, and he then told investigators how he financed the police sting.
The Cleveland police say that everything you've told me up to this point is a lie. Mm-hmm. That you weren't doing any drug sales, they never knew about any drug sales, they didn't know about Woodland Avenue. They say you're a liar.
Well, you know, I took 2 lie detector tests. I don't know if you're aware of that. They were asked to take a lie detector test, and they wouldn't take them.
Not only did Fechner take 2 tests, he passed both of them. Last December, 5 members of the A-team went on trial for participating in drug sales. The prosecution's star witness, Arthur Fechner.
Now, I think, would you point Sergeant Bistricki out, please?
He's the gentleman sitting at the end of the table there.
But in a controversial decision, the judge acquitted the police for lack of evidence, and then ruled that even if the officers had helped sell drugs, as part of a sting, that would be legal. For weeks, there were demonstrations at City Hall, some blacks charging cover-up and saying it was now open season for police to sell drugs in their neighborhoods.
It's a black, it's a white issue, it's a poor people's issue, it's a rich people's issue. It's a plague that's on all of us.
Feeling the political heat, Mayor Voinovich flip-flopped, saying it appeared the police had broken the law.
We will not use money from any drug sales, whatever, for anything in terms of that, because that's period. That's out the door, period, nothing.
And last month, the mayor suspended Police Chief Rudolph for failing to supervise the A-team. So, 4 years after the biggest drug bust in Ohio history, the Fechner case is still being played out. Members of the A-team say it has wrecked their lives.
It's destroyed my family. It cost me my wife, it cost my children their mother. We got divorced because of this case, the pressures of the case.
It hurt. I came on this job with a good name, and I lost that name. They took it away. And I want to get it back.
As for Fechner, he'll be in prison for at least 3 more years. Plenty of time to reflect on the furor his case has raised in Cleveland and decide with those blacks who believe he would never have been allowed to sell drugs in a white neighborhood.
I don't believe that if the sales were occurring in maybe Mayor Vonovich's neighborhood or Sergeant Bystricki's neighborhood, that they would allow it to go on.
We should tell you that we asked Sergeant Bystricki to sit for an interview. He continues to deny the charges, but he declined to be interviewed by us. But as we said, the city of Cleveland is inflamed over the issue, and joining us now tonight from Cleveland is a man who has said that the police have to do what they have to do to get drug dealers off the street. He is Councilman Jim Roukakis. Let me ask you, Mr. Councilman, though, do you really think that Arthur Fechner would have been allowed to sell $500,000 worth of drugs in a fancy white neighborhood in Cleveland?
First of all, I don't believe that Arthur Fechner sold drugs in any neighborhood in the city of Cleveland. He's a con man, a notorious liar, and a drug dealer. I believe the Cleveland police. It is, my problem is this thing has gone on long enough. 4.5 years, 6 investigations, 5 arrests, charges, drops, ruined lives, a discredited chief, a discredited mayor. My question is, where does it all end?
Well, my question back to you, though, again, is, with such a thing, and the mayor himself said it clearly got out of hand, it wasn't being supervised, would it have happened in a white neighborhood, in a Shaker Heights?
Well, let me just say this. These are extraordinary times. We have probably, as this program is being played tonight, 500 dealers out on the streets making thousands of deals. We have 49 members of the narcotics unit. The drug dealers are not playing by Marcus of Queensberry rules. Would it have happened? I don't think it did happen. Could it happen? I would say this. If we have to use extraordinary measures, in some cases they're justified.
What about this? This is a man sitting next to me who represents the district in the black community in which Arthur Fechner apparently did operate, according to him. Congressman Louis Stokes, what about this? Do the police have to do it?
Well, firstly, the councilman's statement is absolutely absurd. The police themselves admit that $560,000 was raised by Fechner by what they call the sale of debts and through property sales. So for him to make this absurd statement is astounding to me. There is evidence all during the trial that Fechner brought money into the police station and into Woodruff Hospital, where the police were present, in brown paper bags. At the trial, there were 2 receipts produced. By the way, you'd be interested in knowing that the police can produce no receipts whatsoever for the receipt of $560,000. The 2 receipts that were produced at the trial were produced by Fechner, one for $94,000 and the other for $72,000.
If this indeed
Diane,
happened,
if I may interrupt here, Congressman, what do you want? We have a discredited chief who's leaving office in 3 months. A mayor who's been discredited is leaving office in 3 months. We've got ruined lives. Policemen who have had 3 of their marriages have been ruined by this affair. I want to ask the congressman, we stopped public hangings on public square 130 years ago. What more do you want, Congressman? When do we put this issue to rest and deal not with what happened in 1985, but what is happening today in your district tonight?
I want precisely what is occurring at this time, and that is the United States Justice Department is investigating this matter. They're reviewing every facet of it, and I want whatever results comes out of that. Something has to be done. No one yet in Cleveland. The people whom you've named have never admitted who approved of this. Somebody approved of throwing this neighborhood away and saying it doesn't matter to sell drugs in a black community. Somebody did that. Somebody has to answer for that.
You're not naive. You know that people who buy drugs in the black community are not only blacks. There are white kids from Parma, white kids from Lakewood, and my constituents. You know that. You also know we have a serious problem, and in the city of Cleveland, instead of focusing on the problem as it exists today, you continue to dwell on this incident that occurred 4.5 years ago. You're not fair to the policemen whose lives have been ruined, and you're not being fair to your constituents who deal with this problem every day.
I'm going to continue to dwell upon this until we get some answers on it. Here was a man who admitted to the police when they entered into this illicit relationship with him that he had already sold $20 million worth of drugs in that community.
A man you claim to trust.
And then they let him sell another $500,000 worth.
The Cleveland
That's
police.
wrong.
Mr. Roukakis, let me just butt in here to ask you a question about fairness. Was it fair to the black kids in that community who bought drugs?
Again, Sam, I go back to what I said earlier. I don't believe Arthur Fechner. I would say this, and
All right, let me ask you a question. You don't believe Arthur Fechner? I accept that. Do you think under any circumstances it's right for the police to conduct a sting of the nature that Fechner accuses them of conducting?
Sam, it might be justified in some circumstances.
Tell me the circumstances under which it would be justified to let black kids or white kids
black
get
kids or
hooked
white
on
kids.
drugs.
The mayor said it's not a black problem, it's not a white problem. We have 49 narcotics officers in the city of Cleveland for a population of 560,000 people. If every narcotics
Why
officer
don't you
had
have
to
more?
use-
You're running for mayor. Are you going to raise taxes to hire more officers?
No, I'm not running for mayor. I'm a city councilman in Cleveland. I have no intention of running for mayor ever, for that matter. It's a tough job. I don't want it.
Well, that shows, maybe that shows your smartness. As a city councilman, would you support raising taxes?
Well, I would, and I would take it a step further, let you know that we have moved money over into the narcotics budget. There's 25 additional officers going on next week. But let me just tell you this. We do not have the manpower. As I said earlier, drug dealers don't use Marcus of Queensberry rules. They are winning the fight. We are losing.
Let me turn
And
this
there
back
may
to
be
you.
circumstances.
Congressman Stokes, don't sometimes the ends justify the means. They're not Marcus of Queensberry rules out there, and a big drug dealer was nabbed.
You cannot justify the sale of drugs in a community by the police. It is against federal law. It's against law in every state I know of. Only in Cleveland would this have occurred, where the police, where the police felt that they could do this and get away with it. In any other community in America, you cannot have a drug dealer raise the funds. The police department themselves, all the police admit that they have a fund there by which the city provides the money. But now, what do? They did something unheard of anywhere in America. They had the drug dealer raise the funds for their sting.
You don't know what's going around. Let me just say this, Dan, if I may. This is clearly, at best, this was a drug bust that worked and worked very successfully. At worst, if you believe Arthur Fechner, it was good people making a bad decision. Not, as the congressman alleges, bad people doing bad things. That's not what it's all about.
It didn't happen in your neighborhood, did it? And it wouldn't happen in Lakewood. It wouldn't happen in Palmer. It wouldn't happen in Shaker Heights. It wouldn't have happened in any white community. It happened in a little community where you had a poor public housing unit right across the street with drugs being sold all through that community.
No, Congressman, last night and last week I attended meetings in my community where I was told by the narcotics division my area could not be given protection because the entire narcotics unit was working inner city projects in your district trying to bust drug dealers.
All right,
you don't hear me crying racism.
I hope they don't let them raise the money that they vest them with.
Well, Congressman, you're avoiding what I'm saying.
Mr. Councilman, Congressman,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
let you continue the argument. I expect you will, and we'll be back in a moment.
When Primetime Live continues, the case of Ronald Monroe.
Ronald Monroe is positively the man that murdered my mother.
If he did, why did Louisiana Governor Buddy Roemer call off his execution? He'll tell us live. Primetime Live. Brought to you by General Food.
Tonight, his name is Ronald Monroe.